Welcome back, students. In the first part of our lecture, we explored how management begins with the structural and the systematic thinking through classical approach. Now, in the second part of today's session, we will begin by looking at the behavioral approach which brought a human perspective to management by focusing on motivation, social dynamics, and employees' well-being. After that, we will move on to the modern approaches, including quantitative approach, system theory, contingency thinking, and the impact of globalization and technology. These approaches reflect the complexity of managing organizations in today's fast changing world. So, let us continue our journey through the evolution of management thoughts. I am Dr. Ala Rukshabir from Southern Business School, University of Southern Punjab, Multan. Let's start our today's lecture with the behavioral approach. Now, let's shift to the behavioral approach which emerged as a reaction to mechanical view of the classical theorist. This approach emphasized the human side of work, people's emotions, their social needs and motivations. One of the most famous studies supporting this view of behavioral approach was conducted at the Hawthorne plant of Western Electric, where researcher Elton Mayo discovered that workers' productivity improved not just because of better lighting or working conditions, but because they felt they are being observed and valued. This became known as Hawthorne's study, or which we also called Hawthorne effect. For example, imagine you are working on a group assignment, and when the teacher is watching or when your peers encourage you, don't you put your more extra efforts? That's the idea behind Elton Mayo's research. He concluded that social relationships at work matters a lot, and that productivity is influenced not just by the physical conditions, but also by employee morals and interactions. Organizations like Google and Facebook use these insights, use this behavioral approach. They provide flexible working environment to their employees, free meals to their employees, and different wellness programs, not just to be generous, but because it enhances improved employee satisfaction, their productivity and their working morale. So, the human relationship movement which emerged from this idea of behavioral aspect emphasized communication, leadership and group dynamics. It helped managers see employees as people, not just as a tool of production. After the behavioral approach, the next approach is the quantitative approach. Quantitative approach, also known as management science, developed during World War II, when military operations required fast and efficient decisions based on numbers and logics. So, it is more concerned about numbers and logic. This approach uses mathematics, statistics and different computer models to solve organizational problems. This is quantitative approach. For example, from everyday life, we take an example, airlines like Emirates or PAIG use complex softwares to decide which routes to fly, how to allocate seats, how to price the tickets. all these decisions are based on demand forecasting, cost modeling, logistical planning, and all thanks to quantitative techniques. Even in supermarkets, when you see discounts or on certain days or on certain items, those choices are data driven. This approach helps managers reduce waste, optimize resources, and make informed decisions. However, it is important to remember that numbers can't capture everything, but especially emotions or motivations. But this approach is known as quantitative approach and used in multiple fields. The next approach is system approach. System approach views an organization as a set of interrelated parts working together to achieve a common goal. Each part of the system, whether it is marketing, finance, HR or production, must function properly for the organization to be successful. For example, a car, if the engine, wheels or brakes fail, the whole car stops working. Similarly, in an organization, if one department underperforms, it affects the entire system in a university or an organization. For example, if admissions are delayed, it affects course scheduling, class sizes and faculty workload as well. So, this approach also emphasizes the idea of open systems organizations that interact with their environment, adapting to change such as competition, regulations and customer preferences. So, system approach means the whole thing works as a unified as a whole. Afterward, there comes contingency approach, which tell us that there is one best way to manage. Instead, the best approach depends on the situation. A leadership style that works in a startup might fail in a hospital. A strict rule based approach might work in a factory, but not in a creative design agency. So, let us consider a small case. Ali is managing a textile factory where workers are mostly unskilled and require constant supervision. Here, a structured and directive style might work better. Now, contrast this with Sarah, who leads a team of software developers. They prefer autonomy, more innovation. So, Sarah would need a more flexible and participative approach. This is contingency view. So, what works best in one situation does not mean work best in second situation as well. It helps manager to adapt styles according to the context, people and the environment. And the last approach is globalization and technology. Finally, we must recognize how globalization and technology are reshaping management. Today's organizations are not limited to borders. You may be sitting in Pakistan and working with a team in Canada or China. This has created a need for cross-cultural management, virtual collaborations and digital tools. For example, many companies now use AI for customer service, data analytics and for recruitment. Managers must understand not only business, but also how to lead a technology driven, globally connected world. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated this transformation. Remote work, Zoom meetings and digital HR processes have become the new normal. So, we need to understand all these approaches, from the behavioral approach, then coming to the system approach, quantitative approach and globalization and technology adoption. So, if I am going to conclude all this discussion, management has evolved from rigid structures and rules to flexible, human-centered and technologically savvy practices. The classical approach laid the foundation, and coming to the behavioral approach that brought empathy and modern approaches help organizations to adapt to complexity and change. As a student of management, it is important for you to understand not just these theories, but how and when to apply them. Think of yourself as a future manager. What kind of a workplace would you build? Structured or efficient? Flexible or people focused? Feel free to share your thoughts, questions, or your favorite management theory. In our next lecture, we will explore how the external environment affect the managerial decision making, because there is no doubt that external environmental factors also affects the managerial decision making within the organization. So, in the next lecture, we will discuss the environmental factors. That is all about today's lecture. Thank you so much.